MFKZ is a weird little animated movie based on a French comic series that started in 2006. The artist, Guillaume Renard, has opened up his own publishing label and the comic is still ongoing today, with the latest release being in April of 2020. And all this was successful enough to form a partnership between French and Japanese animation studios to adapt the comic into a feature film. The story of MFKZ takes place in Dark Meat City, New California, a portrayal of the scummier parts of Los Angeles, even going all the way with the Spanish culture and religious influences. Our hero, Angelino, and his two buddies Vince and Willie are diminutive teenage slackers who have a hard time holding down a job and are just getting by day in their disgusting roach-infested apartment.
Okay, come to Papa. Ah, there you go. Yeah, he's got a little treat for you. Oh, he brought some friends too. That's cool.
Ugh, this is gross, man. And you're eating the pet food?
And yes, for some unexplained reason, Vince is a skeleton whose head is always on fire. After getting distracted by a beauty on the street, which directly leads to a head-on collision with the truck, Angelino starts seeing creatures in the shadows of ordinary people. It's like the movie They Live, but don't get too attached, this particular premise doesn't get a ton of traction. And then they get chased down by some mysterious men in black suits. But when push comes to shove, a fire erupts in Angelino's heart and awakens a power he didn't even realize he had. Now they gotta lay low from the police and do what they can to survive, along the way discovering more about Angelino's mysterious past. The story is okay. It has that superhero origin story vibe, with Angelino learning more and more about himself over time and coming to terms with who he is as a person. I was on board with it until I get to the second half. No spoilers, but that's when everything really gets off the rails. To its credit, there are hints leading up to it, and it's not totally unsatisfying, but I wasn't really feeling the big plot twist. However, the story isn't what you watch this movie for. You watch it for the setting, the characters, and the animation. MFKZ has a really interesting city that you barely get the chance to see much of. It's somewhat grounded in reality, but with really vibrant characters that are a ton of fun to watch. I wish the whole movie was like this, revolving around this trio going about their days with just a little bit of action and car chases to help make it more exciting. But then the story gets way out of hand and I start to tune out a little bit. I wish it was just a little more down to earth. Those are my favorite parts. But then the movie goes all the way to the moon. The music is pretty darn solid, complementing the action really well. And some of the tracks were made by the artist The Toxic Avenger, who you might know as contributing to the Fury soundtrack. And the movie soundtrack is just as awesome.
What the fuck?
Contact.
What? Vince, man, what the fuck are you doing? Get your ass over here and help!
The animation is kind of choppy at times, and I don't like it when 3D objects are used. I feel like they clash with the otherwise 2D elements. The English voice acting is also a little off here and there. I get that it's never easy to dub for a foreign language, and besides, it's not bad by any means, so I can excuse this one. Although, all of these complaints are very minor in terms of the movie as a whole. The action is exciting, fun to follow, and awfully violent. There are blood and guts and a ton of gore throughout the whole movie. It's an interesting juxtaposition against the otherwise cartoony style, and it's pretty cool. My biggest complaint is the pacing. It's got that similar issue that other movies adapted from books tend to have, kind of like in This Corner of the World. It's like they tried really hard to jam in as much as they could, but the result is stuff like side stories coming out of nowhere and longer explanations that overstay their welcome. This is definitely something that's easier to present in a written format, where the reader can take their time and immerse themselves in each page for as long as they wish. But for a linear film that always has to keep moving, sometimes it doesn't translate as well. It's not a deal breaker, but it did take me out of the experience a little bit. I feel like MFKZ isn't quite fully realized. It's trying to balance a more grounded narrative and believable characters, but along with being totally over the top and ridiculous. That's not to say that it's not necessarily possible to do that. That same approach is a big part of why I like FourFaceButtons so much. And now that I think about it, the two are actually kind of similar to each other, in an odd sort of way. However, FourFaceButtons had much better pacing and wasn't afraid to more directly mix the mundane with the strange, while MFKZ, on the other hand, tries to keep them a little more separate. It's hard for me to explain, and I don't think the story is missing anything per se, but rather that it could have used a different approach. Again, and keep in mind that I haven't even read the original comic, but I would imagine that this is something that works better in that format. Even so, for what it is, this movie is still a ton of fun and I recommend it. Not even taking into account everything that I've said, if just the animation and art style alone that you've seen look interesting to you, then give the movie a watch. I think most people are going to enjoy this one. Thanks for watching my review on MFKZ.